Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. I'm Wayne Highlander, Director of Sales for Bona Adhesives.
I'm Rob Johnson from the Bona Training.
How we doing, Rob?
Pretty good, buddy. How you doing this week?
We are back and live.
Wow, it's been a little while, hasn't it?
We've been out of the game a little bit because
well, I'm glad the contract negotiations finally settled.
I won't work until I get it's everything
I
right.
know, I know, and you stuck to your guns here.
Yeah, thank you. And I tried to get you promotion also, but there just wasn't enough money there.
There wasn't enough room.
Get it.
Right. You're no Tom Brady. You're taking the whole pie for yourself. That's all right.
Yeah.
I get it.
But
everybody gets it.
You have every reason to be proud, though, because you are doing good. You are absolutely doing good. You are right on track. You're on track. I'll say that. You are on track.
Yeah.
I rarely get to go to schools anymore, and you know that. And I was at a school. It was a 5-day school. Dave Marzalek. If you don't know who Dave is, I mean, on social media, he's won 24 of the years and what have you. And he's does some schools from time to time. And we Bona sponsored the adhesive for the school and the abrasive. So I got to go down there for a couple of days, and I rarely do that. And I've said this before, but I'm going to just repeat it real quick. I was on a plane years ago now, sitting next to an old guy. He sat next to me. I should have put my headphones on a little quicker than I did because he engaged me in conversation. And he had a really loud, booming voice. And I was self-conscious because you could hear him, like, I'm sure 5 rows in either direction around us. Okay. And what he was pontificating on is this younger generation. They don't work hard and they don't know. And then when at my age, whatever. And then as I was sitting there listening to him, I thought, oh my God, I never want to be this guy. This is a life lesson for me. So that's what I got out of this situation, is that, as you get older, you think you've been around, you have the right to say something, or you feel like I've earned my stripes and I can have an opinion on certain things. And I thought this was a lesson for me, because I don't ever want to be that guy as I get even older than I am. So I say that to say this. I was at that school. And by the way, too, the NWFA at the same time was having a school. Ben Tata, Lenny Hall, Mike
Dittmer?
Mike Dittmer. I know Mike.
Are you kidding? You couldn't remember Dittmer's name?
I was thinking past him to somebody else, but there may be other instructors there, but I don't remember there's any other instructors. But
oh my gosh!
So
I hope Mike didn't. Mike, I'm sorry if you were listening.
Oh, Mike knows I love him. So at the same time, thousands of miles away, there was another school going on, and you think about that for a minute. When you go to a school, when you commit to go to a school, you're turning down work, right? You're putting money out of your pocket. You are away from your family, and you could be on vacation. God knows these guys work hard in this industry, and a week of fishing or week laying around doing something for themselves sounds pretty damn enticing. But they weren't doing that. They were working 12, 16 hours a day, working on their craft, learning new skills, learning new disciplines, and getting a chance to do something that they may not be able to do on a job site. And I think that's pretty heroic. I think that's pretty awesome that guys do that. And, talk about different generations. When is the best work being done? And, blah, blah, blah. And I started thinking about my own contemporaries when the guys, when I was doing floors back in the 80s, if I think about, let's say 10 of the contractors in my area that I knew, and I think to myself, were they doing this level of craftsmanship? Number one. And number two, would they go to these schools? And by and large, I don't know how many of them would. So you put on top of that passion and that commitment and that drive. And then you also look at the tools that are available today. The sanding tools are better. The The vacuums are better. I'd argue that the finishes and the adhesives are better, and the technology certainly is out there more. I think this group of floor guys coming up, especially when you see guys like this, I mean, it's really good to see that. You know, when you have guys in the industry, and there's too many to mention. I say young guys too, but at the Mars Lake School, there's a lot of older guys there too, a lot of mentors, a lot of just phenomenal floor guys. And that's the other thing too, guys. When guys have been around the trade for as many years as some of these guys have been around, and they're still willing to take the time out and go do that, I think it just speaks volumes about the kind of guys that are in this industry and the character of the guys and how hard they work and how dedicated they are to their craft. I hope that they can get this across to their customers. Naysayers also will say that, well, you can't make any money making a medallion, and there's no money in doing those type of floors. So, I mean, here's my thoughts about that. So what? There's a lot of reasons that you do floors, and
So what?
maybe you'll never do a floor like this in your life, and maybe you will. You know what I mean? But you're working with your hands, and you're working with wood, and you're working creating beautiful. When you're just sanding and finishing a floor, just installing a floor, a straight laid floor, perfectly done, is, to me, is beautiful. You know what I mean? And so, if you want to do something for yourself, I think you owe it to yourself. Why not? And maybe you will never do another one of these floors. You know what I mean? But maybe you learn something, and it keeps you interested in your career, and you're excited about what you're doing. And so I don't have that approach. I don't think like that. I mean, yeah, if it's a business decision that I'm going to make medallions. I told you the story about my father-in-law when he saw me making a medallion in my garage years and years ago when I first started. And at the end of the first day, he seen that I had about a square foot of work done. And the second day he came back, and maybe I had 2 square feet of work done. And he's walking around, he's looking at it, smoking a cigarette, nervous, looking at it and everything. I just married his daughter, and I have to support her. And then the third day he came back, and I had 30 inches of work done. And he threw a cigarette out and he goes, look, dummy, you ain't no artist. You get your ass out there and sand them floors. You're not making any money here. So I get that aspect of it all. I totally understand that part of it. But I still say, you give a lot of yourself to this business. You know what I mean? You give a lot to your customers, and you give a lot to your business, and you give a lot to your employees and that type of stuff, people you work with and your family and everything. I think 1 week for yourself to do something and to be around other floor guys, like-minded floor guys that love what they do, and to be able to learn from some of these guys that are so willing to teach. Hats off to Dave Marslick and Lenny Hall and Michael Dittmer and Lenny and Ben Tata and all these other guys that are out there. We all know Randy Harris is another stud, Bill Powell, these guys that are willing to give up the information that they have and share it with others. I think it's fantastic. So I could only be there for two days. But it was really good for me to be there. And it's really cool to see it. They threw me out after a couple of days.
They threw you out?
I was eating
Was
too
it
much
you
food.
could only be there for 2 days, or they could only handle you for 2 days?
I require more food than most people do.
Okay.
And so I think that was the cause. But no, I had to be on the other side of the world. I had to be on the side of the country. And I had as a matter of fact, I'll tell you this, I never went to bed that night. I worked all day in Florida. It must have been a Wednesday night or Tuesday night. And then I drove all through the night to get to the airport, and then flew out without going to bed. So it was a long few days, but I was so impressed with the guys, man, and just the camaraderie. And that's a big part of it, man, is the camaraderie. And you see guys are so tired at the end of the day, but they're hanging out with each other. And, thanks to social media, social media has made these guys' lives better and has made it harder. And we've talked about that, where, and it gets me excited to see on social media these floors that people are doing across the country. All kinds of different intricate floors and what have you, or fancy floors. And that's good. We share. There's been more sharing than ever before on how to do stuff. The old mentality was, hey, no one showed me, I'm not going to show you. And learn it by yourself. But on the other hand, you're working with clients that, you show up on Monday, they go on the internet Monday night, and Tuesday morning they're experts. So that has made their life difficult. And also they can leave you were late for an estimate, or you turned down the job because you're too busy, and that can leave you a 1-star review. How do you fight that? You know what I mean? So in ways it's made their life harder. It's also harder to find employees. That's made life more difficult for them. But these guys power through it, man. And I just think it's very cool to see, and hats off to them. And it was a great experience.
If you want to see some of those pictures, I follow Bill Powell on Instagram, and man, he has been posting like crazy just from that school. You could see how crazy excited everybody is, and that's the funny part about Marslack. His stuff is more like art than it is a wood
Yeah.
floor. It really is amazing what's going
Yeah.
on there.
It is.
And I can see why they threw you out.
Mhm.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
They need to get stuff done, not just listen to somebody talk.
True. Well, I was waiting for you to say something, anything, so I had to keep rolling.
Well, I could. I was trying to, but I timed you on that. You just went 11 straight minutes talking.
Thanks.
Well, I don't even think you took a breath.
No, that might
that
be
was
a record
impressive.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was fun. You see how excited I was for being there, and look at all the things that were done. I mean, and I'll tell you something too. It tells you how hard it is to scroll saw. Guys were doing an incredible, very intricate installs on the front room and the other rooms in the house, making a lot of progress. And the guys on the scroll saw, again, end of day one, you got, hardly anything done, and by comparison. But to see the picture come to life every day, see a little bit more come to life, a little bit more come to life, and then it starts to make sense. And I think we had like 5 or 6 scroll saws going at one time, and you had all kinds of planers and everything. So everybody, we're bending wood. There's adding lights in the floors, which is pretty cool. Finish that glows in the dark. It just, I mean, you name it. It was the Roms pattern, which happens to be my favorite pattern floor, and just really incredible stuff. But so if for guys that don't get a chance to do this all the time, having all the materials there and all the guys there, and then to share different techniques and stuff, I thought was really cool, man. It was a great experience. So yeah.
So you had that school, right? And
Yep.
you said Lenny Hall and Dittmer were at another school.
Yeah.
Where was that?
NWFA school in St. Louis.
And you said that was like 1,000 miles away that same week.
Yeah.
And also, I was doing a school up in Toronto.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you said, with the old guys, would they be going to a school back then? What was there? Seriously, back in the 80s and 90s? Was there 2 schools a year? The Northman School?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, there was not the education that is going on today. I mean, think about it. There's 3 schools that we know of.
Yeah.
Going on last week.
That we know of, yeah.
We know of. Install, sand and finish, and then our school up in Toronto, which was a sand and finish.
How many schools have you done so far this year?
How
many?
I have done 40 so far.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, I've had 40 events. I was just looking at my schedule. I could end up with 50 by the end of the year.
Wow. That is unreal.
We got 2 Christmas schools coming up in December. Yep. We have a bunch more schools. We have a Christmas school come. For you guys listening, I think it's December, week of the 9th there. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, week of the 9th. We'll be doing our famous Christmas school in New Jersey. And also this year, the week after, I think that's the week of the 16th, we'll be doing another Christmas school in Nashville. Hopefully you and Judy could come to that one.
You know what? I love that you do that. And what's the price of admission?
The price of admission, I think at both schools we're going to be doing like last year, Toys for Tots,
Yeah, that's awesome.
and that's the only price for admission is bring a toy for a kid,
Yeah,
and you heard me at the sales meeting talking about it, and boy, it's the best schools of the year. Just
yeah,
because you were talking about the camaraderie, and we came up with the idea a few years ago that there's a lot of companies out there. I'm shocked how many guys are one guys. One guy to the one. What am I trying to say here? You know what I mean?
no, actually, I don't. I was spacing out a little bit.
Yeah, I was just spacing out
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
You know,
I did my 11 minutes.
one man operations, and they never get a
Yeah,
Christmas, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They don't get a Christmas party. They don't get an
No,
office party.
yep.
So we kind of, we do some really good food, have some fun. Santa shows up. It's they decorate the places. It's a blast. I don't know if you've ever been to one, but you should definitely come to the one in Nashville. That's right in your backyard.
Yeah, I don't do a lot around the holidays, or giving and stuff like that. Um,
Maybe this would change your
but
tune.
but I would do that. I would do that, a Toys for Tots thing. I think that'd be really cool, and great locations. Nashville, come on, around Christmas time.
That's exact. I said at our last sales meeting, I walked up to Jeremiah and I said, "Christmas in Nashville. My
Yeah.
God, it's a Hallmark movie."
Not only that, here's another good reason why it'd be good to go to that one. Nashville's insane right now. Nashville is on a Friday or Saturday night, and I'm no party pooper. I love
You
to go out
like to
and have a
go
good
for the
time.
hang, yeah.
I do, but Nashville's just getting too much. It's just really too much. But in December, it'll be like the crowds will be less on it. So Friday, Saturday night are still good. All the bars downtown, man, for having a good time. You bring your bride, even though it's December, you think, oh, it's too cold. Nashville is a great hang no matter what time it is, man. And you're doing something good for Toys for Tots and everything. And so I will be there. No question, I'll be there.
Good.
God willing.
That's good.
Yeah. So good stuff, Rob.
But back to what you were saying. Uh, let's just take that Toronto school. I had guys who have been doing floor kids, in the business for 2 years, and a few guys that were there for 30 years, which really is the makeup of our classes. I mean, it is. I'm psyched about the new generation. I
Yeah.
know the average age of a floor guy is 50 or better, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But we get some new talent coming in.
But
they embrace the technology. That's what I've noticed about the new talent.
Yeah. And
They just grab on to the tech. Now they're all toolies.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And whenever you see an older guy show up at the class, you want to shake his hand. I'm always so impressed. I've said it so many times in this. I was so impressed with a guy that's been in the trade for 15, 20, 30 years and still willing to go to a class. That says so much about them, man. I just think that's so cool that they're not, hey, I know everything. You can't teach me anything, or even if they are, we all know sometimes it starts out like that, but by the end, we've said it so many times on this show. They're like, wow, I didn't know you could do that, or I learned this, or take notes of that, or what have you. So, but I think education is never a bad thing. And I'll say it again for anybody that says, yeah, you went to NWFA and did all these fancy floors, but are you really going to do that? It's almost a side to me. It's almost like a side point. It's like, yeah, I get it. I lived that life. You did too. And you don't get a lot of calls for those type of floors. But you know what? Some people do because they made a niche for themselves. I know people make a living just doing those type of floors. Was it Arata? The guy, I can't remember his last name or his first name, won the floor of the year last couple of times. The guy's incredible. Kills me that I don't remember his name. I want to say Arata. Should get that right. Yeah, but even if it's good for you because it's something that keeps you interested in the trade and gets you excited about it and passionate about it, and you're doing some of those cool floors too. I think for that it's worthwhile. So I get it. I totally get it when people say, oh, well, there's no money in it. I get all sides of it. and I still say it's very much worth going.
You know, the old saying about practice harder and the games are easier. I think that's what a lot of those schools are. You know, like you were saying about the fancy medallions and stuff like that. That's practice. That's hard. That's going to up your game no matter what you're doing. Installs, sand and finish, doing work like that, knowing how to run that scroll saw, things like that. You're just going to be a better contractor in the end. Doesn't mean you have to go out and do it every single day,
Yeah. Well,
but you're moving forward. You're learning more.
and Tom Orada is a guy, Ourada is the guy doing some incredible work. I was trying to think of his name. But well, one of the best classes the NWFA has is the jigs class. Because that's the whole thing is setting up. I mean, if you can set up the jigs and process and get that dialed in, everything else becomes way easier. There's a little bit of math in doing some of those geometric floors and what have you. But really, if you get the sled set up, you get those dialed in, then that's just as fun to me as making the actual floor. You know, getting it the right angles, the right degree, and everything, and get those dialed in. That learning that and having those jigs, man, that is priceless. Because that alone makes you such a better floor person if you can get those dialed in. So it changes. Those are game changers, man.
They have a
Yes,
course
sir.
just for sleds and jigs.
Yeah, yes, they do, and it's incredible what you can do. The first time I ever seen someone do a jig and a sled was the guy Gene Klotz from Renaissance Floors. He was doing fancy corners, and he did a sled and a jig that he could cut like 10 a piece of wood at the same time to make up the corner. So when you run it through the sled, you're cutting like 10 pieces at one time, all different sizes and you know to make up the corner. And I thought that is pretty cool. He was making them so fast and so accurate because his sled was dialed in. So yeah, that's kind of really interesting stuff to me. So when I say the tools are better, my goodness, man. I mean, you can now some of these intricate floors that we were doing back in the day, we would be on these things with an edger. You know what I mean? We'd be on these things, and now with the power drive, you can get these slower and the abrasives are so much better. It was like caveman style. When I look back now at the abrasives back in the 80s when we first started and some of the things we were doing compared to today, it is unreal how flat you can get these floors, man. Like we would
Well,
take
I
do a
don't know.
medallion.
We had some good choices for abrasives. You had aluminum oxide, or you could use aluminum oxide and a screen. Yeah, yeah. I was talking to you the other day, and I was talking to somebody at the convention, and we kind of decided that the craft is used to be the sanding. The craft used to be the sanding because the equipment was rough, and to make a floor look good, it was rough. You had to go through a lot of steps.
Mm-hmm.
Where we really were limited to what we were doing. Most of the time, it was just slapping poly down. There wasn't a lot of colors back then. People weren't looking for wire brushing. They weren't looking for all the colors and tints and shadings and you name it. What guys do. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think the craft is more in the coatings and of course the installations that you were doing at the Marzalak school, and where I think the craft in sanding used to be, being able to take a machine that leaves chatters and take that all out. That used to be the craft.
Uh, People
Eh,
today will go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
People today will probably never appreciate what you had to go through with a split drum, with a drum sander, and worrying about chatters, and hoping to God that, like, sometimes you'd see them, but like you kind of knew, like, all right, I see them, but they're so slight. I know they'll go away when I stain it. Versus, I think they're going to show through everything. Versus, they look okay, but then you put the first coat on and it brings them out. Versus, if I look at the floor this direction, I don't see them. If I turn around, I look at the floor this direction, I see them. And the stress over that, over the unfairness of working your butt off all week long, working so hard to end up with chatter marks, it's gone. I mean, really, truly, the power drive, that's gone. Like I said years ago, when we did this podcast, I said chatter marks should go away the way of the bubonic plague. I mean, you should never have to deal with chatter marks again. So that's out of the equation. But look, when you talk about finishing, I think the biggest advance in finishing in our lifetime, and it's not the end all be all, because there isn't a one size fits all with finish. But I really do think when rolling came in and when finishes were formulated to roll, and not all of them are to this day, not all finishes can be rolled. I think rolling changed the game. But even saying that, I don't think it's for every job. I mean, I think there's jobs when you should roll. So some jobs you whatever, but some jobs you can't roll or shouldn't roll, in my opinion. But rolling has really changed the entire game of finishing, and it's made that easier. But finishing, to your point, is still a lot of craftsmanship comes with finishing, and it's all in preparation. The finishing, the actual finishing of the job, when you start to go to the floor, okay, I'm going to go finish the floor today, put a finish coat on. It's just a percentage of the actual job. There's so much of it is the preparation, the abrading the floor, the vacuuming, tack ragging, doing all that, checking the lighting, putting plastic up, hanging plastic, which direction you go when you leave the job, all that. That is all in the envelope of finishing, but the actual finishing is just like a part of it. You know what I mean? If you did everything else perfectly, then that, and straining the finish and all these things, and the applicator, is it clean? Is it, how did you check that out, and everything, and all these 10 million things you have to do when it comes to the actual finishing part, you can set your life up to be a home run pretty much, or a struggle. And but I think rolling really changed everything. And I want to say, you were so much not on the forefront of rolling. You were so behind the times. You missed the boat so badly on rolling. There's no getting away from this. I'm going to hold you to that, because you missed the game altogether.
I was in a completely different game. Completely different.
I want to
The
explain.
guy who taught me how to pull a T-bar invented the T-bar. That's it. That's how far back I go with the T-bar.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know there was anything else. That was huge. Think of everything that we used to offer in the old days. We offered 4 different things in the old days: shiny or dull, light or dark. That was it. Those were really the only 4 things, and everything was a Lambswool applicator.
Listen, that's no excuse. No. Listen, Alfonso Highlander invented the trowel. Okay, the first guy to ever invent a trowel.
That cannot be true. That Alfonso has to be a lie.
Highlander invented the trowel. You look that up.
Is he Wikipedia. Some kind of relation?
He's my great. So when I talked to you about rolling years and years ago, I said, Rob.
Oh, here we go.
How come
you ready, everybody? You ready for this history lesson, everybody?
We were in another world.
Pour yourself a cup of coffee. Go ahead.
We were in another world. You and I worked for a different company, whatever. And I came to you one day with a roller in my hand, and I said, Rob, how come we don't talk about rolling? You took the roller and threw it as far as you could and said, we don't roll here. We're men. Okay. We don't talk about rolling. I'm going to say my feelings were hurt a little bit. Okay. I thought, whatever. It's Rob Johnson, who might have questioned the great Rob Johnson.
Exactly.
And then
that didn't last very long, did it?
Then you went to Bona, and I thought, oh, Rob's working at Bona. That's pretty cool. And they said he got a video out. So I said, all right, cool. And you're sitting down behind a chair in your nice bonus shirt, and you have a roller in your hand, and you said, hi, I'm Rob Johnson. I'd like to talk to you about rolling. And I thought, you gotta be kidding me right now. So
Yeah,
you
but if you
never
look
gave that.
close at that video, you'll
Mm-hmm.
see a little blood trickling out of my ear. I mean,
Uh-huh.
even I couldn't.
Yeah,
That was hard for me.
I
That was a
bet.
tough one. Yeah.
Well, your world was different, as you
My
said.
world was completely different. We just didn't do a lot of rolling in the sport world. Everything was T-bars. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
but
think
the other thing too is not all finishes can be rolled.
exactly.
Okay, some finishes just don't
Yep.
have the flowing levelers. They don't have the defoamers and things like that. So in our other life, those finishes couldn't be rolled.
So, but I think that is one of the biggest advances for the floor contractor that's come along in ages, and it took a long time. See, it's amazing how things catch on or don't or not. There's no hardly any overnight sensations. Um, a lot of guys didn't embrace rolling for the longest time when it first came out, and now you see, especially with the new kids coming up, almost everybody rolls more than they do anything else. Like that's how they know to put finish on. But that was not the day. That was not the way it was done. You had to master the T-bar if you're doing water-based finish.
I
As
was
I
doing a school with Robbie. We were doing chroma demos, and after the chroma was down, we were showing how you can tint and tent seal using the chroma to get a glaze, right? And Robbie pulls out a bucket, and he's going to roll out of the bucket. Everything's going good, and one of the guys says, "Can you T-bar it, or does it have to be rolled?" And Robbie looks him right in front of everybody, and I swear he did it just because I was in the room and he knew I was listening. He goes, "Yeah, you can T-bar it," he said, "but T-bar is just so old-fashioned, so yesterday, so
oh,
old
wow.
timer, right?" Oh,
Mm,
yeah, he and I'm like, that's what lamb's wool, Robbie, is old-fashioned.
yeah,
Rolling is not old-fashioned, but boy, did he ever. Yeah, I know why he was
yeah,
doing it.
of course, yeah.
But the funny part is, you talk to young guys, especially young guys who have been, Bona their whole career. T-bar is T-bar is not in their repertoire, not at
No,
all. Everything is
yeah,
rolling.
yeah. Yeah, and then we say whatever works, but I do think there's leave room for exceptions, and I still say a brush is one of the best ways you can put finish down. And there are times when I brushed every job, and there's to this day, if a certain circumstances would make me brush a job with a 6-inch brush, and that one being like when we did 5/16 floors that have a lot of lateral movement because they're not tongue and groove, and maybe the subfloor is not really good. I would never roll a heavy coat on that floor ever. I would never, no way I would do that. I would brush that floor because that, in my mind, is an antique. That's a different animal altogether. And I'd brush it and I'd brush that finish on very lightly. And I might do 2 coats instead of 3 coats. But I would treat that floor differently than it was any other floor. I seen a guy who one size, see, this industry, man, is so tough because one size never fits all. He was a roller and he tended to roll it on heavy because that success he had. And job after job, it worked fine. He went to a 5/16 floors. They had a lot of lateral movement in it. They moved furniture on there after 5 or 6 days of whatever. The floors up and down. The broke the seal, and then you got white lines throughout, the heavy white lines throughout the whole floor. And it was just because the finish broke the seal at every one of those boards and allowed air to get underneath it and caused them problems. And if you had done that and you brushed the finish on, you may see a little bit of that, but it would go away in time. But it would be way better approach to that floor. So you never say never. There's never any one size fits all. You kind of have to know everything.
Well, that's why at the Bona trainings we do a ton of both. And for the longest time, people, oh, what do you do? And I said, well, I T-bar all my sealers and I roll my top coats. I feel I get a better finish and better coverage rates with a roller, and I feel I get more control on my sealers. But now I've even changed on that one because we do so many herringbone floors. All of our training centers now have herringbone. I'm rolling everything on herringbone, sealers, and finishes. So, the more you know, the more you can practice,
Yep.
the easier you're going to make your life.
There you go. All right, Rob, I think we're at about the end of the show. I thank you again for your limited participation.
I'm just happy you let me talk after 12 minutes.
Yeah, I did what I do.
Yeah.
So, okay. We have a really good show coming up, I think, interesting about survey. So this has been another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. Please stay tuned for another episode.